All right, y'all, welcome to the show. It's a beefy one. I am wall to wall for you with a bunch of knowledge I'm going to drop straight into your cranium. So, first thing I want to talk about is how Trump is screwed. I'm going to get into detail on that front. It is not screwed because of the thing that you're thinking right now. So, hold on just a minute. We'll dive into it. But there is something, or a few things, that are hanging over his head in a way that perhaps even old Donnie can't wriggle his way out of. So again, hold on that front. I also have a bunch of updates on the right-wing meltdown over the FBI raid of Mar-a-Lago. Sloppy Steve Bannon goes on sloppy Alex Jones show, and they make some sloppy arguments and say really dumb things. The White House is fully embracing the dark Brandon meme. Is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? Is that cringe? Is that not cringe? We'll get into that and much, much more. So anyway, without further ado, let's go ahead and dive into it. So we all witnessed what happened with the FBI raid of Mar-a-Lago the other day. And of course, that was, rightly so, big leading news. Everybody and their mother who's involved in politics is reacting to it in real time. And again, that makes perfect sense. Perfect sense. I was talking about it as well because you can't avoid it. It's a huge story. Everybody's in speculation mode, and that's all you can really do with the limited knowledge that we have at this moment is gather the facts that currently exist and then speculate about what will happen in the future. But there's a way in which Trump is screwed that nobody's really talking about. So first, let me show you this from CNBC. Trump tax returns must be given to Congress, Federal Appeals Court says in new ruling. So, everybody remembers when Trump was running for president, he kept saying like, oh yeah, totally, I'm going to release my tax returns, but I'm only going to release them after the audit of me is done. And every single time he was asked by the media, oh, would you look at that? Shocking. He happens to be under audit yet again. So, he was just always under audit, according to himself. But of course that's not true. He just didn't want to release his tax returns. Why? Because there's probably damning things in there. Now, on the one hand, you might learn he's not as rich as he says he is. That's one thing, but that's really not all that damning. Everybody speculates that he's worth a lot less than he says he is anyway. Or, it can show discrepancies in terms of what he declares publicly versus what he actually files, and you can sort of sniff out financial fuckery. And so that might be one thing that's going on here. Now, I'd never really cared about the whole, tax thing. I never really cared about him releasing it or not. I knew he was hiding shit. So whatever they prove or find, I'm going to be like, well, of course. But he's no longer able to hide them. And so this is one piece of a larger thing that I'm gonna show you here, which really highlights that he's in trouble. So this is in CNBC again. They say tax returns of former President Donald Trump and related entities must be turned over to the White House, turned over to the House Ways and Means Committee, a federal appeals court panel said in a ruling. The decision is the latest blow to Trump, who has repeatedly lost legal efforts to shield his tax returns and business-related documents from various investigations. Again, we're going to get into those investigations in just a second. Nobody's talking about these. The ruling by the U.S. Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia Circuit was announced a day after FBI agents searched Trump's residence at his Mar-a-Lago club in Palm Beach, Florida. The raid is part of an investigation into the removal of sensitive documents from the White House when Trump left office in 2021. Now, there are a bunch of legal experts who are saying, yeah, that's the cover story. That's what the media believes. But in reality, this search was about a lot more than just the classified information that Trump may have taken. And Donald Trump, even though he released a long statement about how unfair the FBI raid is, he has a copy of the warrant. He can release what the warrant says, and he's not, which makes you stop and think, well, why isn't he releasing it? Maybe because there's things that they're searching for in the warrant that relate to January 6th, for example, or other things. So, it's interesting. It seems like some hide the ball is being played here. Now, we're just getting started with the trouble that he's in. Another CNBC article. Trump real estate appraiser hands over thousands of documents to New York in to New York AG in civil probe. Okay. This is big. So there's a number of cases pending right now and investigations into Trump. One's in New York, one's in Georgia. And the one in New York is sort of about standard business practices and tax fraud and things of that nature. And Trump was kind of pulling an Alex Jones there for a hot minute, where he wasn't really complying with the court and he wasn't sending them the documents that he's legally required to send them. And then now we just learned, okay, they handed over thousands of documents. So this article says, a commercial real estate firm held in contempt of court for failing to hand over records on its appraisals of several Trump organizations' properties to New York's Attorney General has turned over nearly 36,000 documents, court filings show. New York Supreme Court Justice Arthur Engoron had found Cushman and Wakefield in contempt last month for not producing documents in State Attorney General Letitia James' civil probe into the Trump organization's business practices, and ordered the firm to pay a $10,000 a day fine until it complied. In a letter to the judge late Friday, James' office said it has now received Cushman's production, which amounts to about 35,867 documents since entry of this court's contempt order. The letter said the Attorney General's office was joining with Cushman in asking the judge to dissolve the contempt order and hold any contempt purged without any fines due or owing. So one of the stories that was reported on a while back is that one of Trump's tricks would be, when talking about his properties, and he would overvalue the shit out of them. And he would say, let's just make a fake example here. My golf course is worth $700 million. And then he would, like, in his tax filings, he would have it down as like worth $80 million. And so he wanted to pay tax on that lower number because then it's a lower tax bill. But in a public facing sense, he would say it's much higher. And, you know, if he tried to sell it, he would sell it at that higher number, etc. And so you can't do that. That's not something you could do. You know, if you get caught doing that, that is a crime. So this is one of the things that they're looking into. Cushman and James spokespeople did not immediately respond to requests for comment. James' office is considering whether to file a civil suit against former President Donald Trump and his company over their business practices, and has said in court filings that it has uncovered substantial evidence establishing numerous misrepresentations in Mr. Trump's financial statements provided to banks, insurers, and the Internal Revenue Service. That's the other thing, is that Trump is loaded to the gills with debt. And when you peek under that rock and you see what the numbers are really like, there's going to be a lot of angry parties there. Now, we already discussed how a lot of the big money political donors are abandoning him for DeSantis. But in terms of how he gets his financing in his private life, well, that almost certainly is drying up as well, because this is going to uncover quite a bit of nonsense, quite a bit of lying that they do. Still not done yet. Trump testimony expected soon in New York civil investigation. Former President Donald Trump is expected to be questioned under oath in the coming days in the New York Attorney General's long-running investigation into his dealings as a real estate mogul. The deposition could be a critical moment in the investigation of allegations that the Republican billionaire's company, the Trump Organization, misled banks and tax authorities about the value of prized assets like golf courses and skyscrapers. New York Attorney General Letitia James' office said in May that it was nearing the end of its probe and that investigators have amassed substantial evidence that could support legal action against Trump, his company, or both. Trump's deposition, a legal term for sworn testimony that's not given in court, is one of the few remaining missing pieces, the Attorney General's office said. Two of the former president's adult children, Donald Trump Jr. and Ivanka Trump, sat for questioning in the investigation in recent days. Two people familiar with the matter said the people were not authorized to speak publicly about the investigation and did so on the condition of anonymity. The Trump's testimony had initially been planned for last month, but was delayed after the July 14th death of the former president's ex-wife Ivana Trump, the mother of Ivanka, Donald Jr., and another son, Eric. Eric Trump sat for a deposition in 2020. Donald Trump Jr.'s testimony last week was first reported by the New York Times. Messages seeking comment were left with James' office and with lawyers for the Trumps. They either declined comment or did not respond. James, a Democrat, has said in court filings that her office has uncovered, quote, significant evidence that Trump's company, quote, used fraudulent or misleading asset valuations to obtain a host of economic benefits, including loans, insurance coverage, and tax deductions. James alleges that the Trump organization exaggerated the value of its holdings to impress lenders or misstated what land was worth to slash its tax burden, pointing to annual financial statements given to banks to secure favorable loan terms and to financial magazines to justify Trump's place among the world's billionaires. The company even exaggerated the size of Trump's Manhattan penthouse, saying it was nearly 3 times its actual size. A difference in value of about $200 million, James' office said. Trump has denied the allegations. Wow, what a shock. Explaining that seeking the best valuations is a common practice in the real estate industry. He says James' investigation is part of a politically motivated witch hunt and that her office is doing everything within their corrupt discretion to interfere with my business relationships and with the political process. There is no case, Trump said in a February statement after Manhattan Judge Arthur Engoron ruled that James' office had the clear right to question Trump and other principals in his company. So, understand something, guys. James is, she's the one who took down Andrew Cuomo. She's the one who took down Andrew Cuomo. So, she's sort of on top of her shit. Not gonna lie. Like, she sort of, dots her I's and crosses her T's. While James has explored suing Trump or his company, the Manhattan District Attorney's Office has long pursued a parallel criminal investigation. That probe had appeared to be progressing toward a possible criminal indictment, but slowed after new district attorney Alvin Bragg took office in January. Wow. A grand jury that had been hearing evidence disbanded. The top prosecutor who had been handling the probe resigned after Bragg raised questions internally about the viability of the case. Bragg has said his investigation is continuing, which means that Trump could invoke his Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination and decline to answer questions from James' investigators. So what we're looking for here is, number one, what's the penalty for actually committing these crimes? It's a civil case, so obviously that's different from a criminal case. But number two, if he sits for a deposition and he can't keep his mouth shut, we might see a situation that's sort of like Alex Jones-like situation where, Jones got caught dead to rights with perjury. I mean, he said, I looked through my phone, I didn't see any Sandy Hook texts. And then when his lawyer accidentally sent the text to the plaintiff's attorneys, they threw up on the screen, here you are texting about Sandy Hook. You said under oath in a deposition, you didn't have any text about Sandy Hook. And now here on the screen are your texts about Sandy Hook. Same thing with email. He said, I don't even use email. And then they're like, whose email is this? He's like, that's mine. Okay, so Trump doing a deposition is hilarious. I hope to watch it, but I'm not even done yet. See, look, you guys know, when Russiagate was at its peak, I was always the one telling you, I just don't see enough there. I don't see enough evidence, and a lot of the claims seem made up, whether it's, the P-tape or he's Vladimir Putin's puppet. And everybody thought, or a lot of people on the Democratic side thought Mueller was going to take Trump out of the White House on handcuffs. That just didn't happen, right? But I was warning you the whole time. But one of the other claims I always made is that he is a shady, dirty businessman, and I'm sure he's done a million run-of-the-mill financial crimes. I'm sure of it. Look, you can't be a real estate developer in New York in the 80s without, for example, like mafia connections. And Trump's lawyer back in the day was the same lawyer that the mafia used. There's been extensive reporting on that. And you're telling me there's, everything's been on the up and up throughout his entire business career? We know that's not true. We know, for example, what do you have? 6 different business bankruptcies, and he always, at the last minute, sort of stiffed everybody who worked for him. Even when he would have buildings built, there were a lot of contractors who came out and said, the motherfucker never paid me. So anybody who is like that also is not keeping their books right and can be caught on some shit by a competent prosecutor. Okay. But I saved the best for last, guys. And this one, honestly, we're just talking child's play up until this point. This is something that dropped last month, which nobody really made a big deal of it, but I think it's actually perhaps even more important than whatever the FBI is doing with their raid and with the Department of Justice's investigation. Georgia prosecutors say all 16 fake Trump electors are targets in criminal probe. So now this relates back to January 6th. One of the things that they actually got the ball rolling on was this idea of like, let's just reject the election and let's do a fake elector panel. And you can't do that. That actually is illegal. And in Georgia, there's a criminal probe into these 16 fake Trump electors. Now, here's what they say. The Atlanta area prosecutor scrutinizing former President Donald Trump's attempts to overturn the 2020 election in Georgia said Tuesday that all 16 of the fake electors who participated in a plan to subvert the Electoral College are now targets of an ongoing criminal investigation. Court documents filed late Tuesday reveal Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis has informed all of the 16 individuals who signed an unofficial electoral certificate that was ultimately sent to the National Archives in late 2020. What idiots. They may be indicted in the probe. The significant development indicates prosecutors are moving closer to possible criminal charges against those involved in the effort. It also suggests the probe may be drawn closer to Trump himself as it comes on the heels of subpoenas that were issued to several members of the former president's legal team who took part in overseeing the effort to overturn the election results in Georgia and other key battleground states. Each of the 16 persons who signed the unofficial elector certificate ultimately submitted to the National Archives. These guys are such idiots. Received a similar target letter alerting that person both that his testimony was required by the special purpose grand jury and that he was a target of the investigation, prosecutor said Tuesday. Court filings earlier Tuesday had revealed that 11 of the 16 fake GOP electors received letters notifying them that they were targets of the investigation and not merely witnesses. Wow. Willis office informed lawyers for those fake electors that the status change from witness to target was the result of new evidence that has come to light over the course of the probe. Quote, as our investigation has matured and new evidence has come to light, in a spirit of integrity, we feel it only fitting to inform you that your client's status has changed to target, Willis's office said, according to a defense filing. The Trump campaign's role in creating false election documents as a way to supplant Joe Biden's win in Georgia has come under increasing scrutiny by prosecutors in Georgia, as well as the Justice Department in recent months. CNN previously reported that Trump campaign officials oversaw efforts to put forward illegitimate electors in 7 swing states Trump lost. The House Select Committee investigating the January 6, 2021 insurrection has linked the effort to Trump's 7-part plan to overturn the election that culminated in the U.S. Capitol attack. That plan, according to the committee, included the fake electors, a pressure campaign on then Vice President Mike Pence to stop the counting of electoral votes, and the assembly of a violent mob that Trump directed to march to the Capitol. Attorneys for the electors say they are moving to quash grand jury subpoenas for appearances beginning on July 25th, calling them unreasonable and oppressive. Okay, so this case, the ball's already rolling. We're already getting somewhere. But the most important part is Eric Holder, former attorney general, who is deeply, deeply in the know in Georgia. He says Trump's going to be indicted. He's going to be indicted over this. Because you have the fake electors, you have the people who set it up with their 7-part plan or whatever it was, and all you need is a couple of them, or one of them, to flip on Trump and say, yeah, it was the big guy who gave the orders, and the orders were X, Y, and Z, and boom, you have a case. You have a criminal case. So he's dealing with civil lawsuits over unjust business practices. He's dealing with the FBI investigation. They say it's over taking classified material, but many experts say it's not just about that. On that warrant is more than just that. Some of it may pertain to January 6th. And then we also have these Georgia cases done by federal prosecutors where the ball's already rolling. The 16 fake electors are already under pressure from law enforcement. And if just one of them flips, now we're talking. And this doesn't even get into the other open questions around the January 6th committee, like, for example, there appears to be some clear evidence of witness tampering that went on. That's one thing. Another thing is there's been evidence uncovered and detailed reporting about how Trump was trying to do fundraising for his Stop the Steal rigged election stuff, and he said they set up a PAC that's all the money's going to go towards that. And then, none of the money went towards that. And they raised millions and millions and millions of dollars. So where'd that money go? That's fraud. Now, look, the witness tampering thing might be hard to prove because of, how detailed, how specific and how high the bar is on that front. It might be hard to prove because of that. And maybe the fraud thing is too, in terms of the basically fake emails he sent out, fundraising, lying about where it was going. there may be some, giant loophole in the way you finance with these things that, he can get away with it. But you're talking about like 6, 7, 8 different fronts where they're honing in on him. And the reason I say Trump is fucked is this very simple point. Number one, if even one of these things works, he's fucked. Number two, even if they don't work, you're now at the point where it's like, you're an average voter, you're a normie, you're like independent / moderate type. They're going to think, look, where there's smoke, there's fire. And even Republicans who have been interviewed by Fox News at Trump rallies say, look, I like the guy, I voted for him twice, but, he's just too toxic right now. We need somebody new. We need new blood. We need like DeSantis, for example. So, and we're going to get to the galaxy brain take a lot of people have a little bit later. The galaxy brain take of like, well, actually, this is going to help Trump. I do not agree with that at all. So if one of these things works, it's a wrap for him. If none of them work, but the normies think where there's smoke, there's fire, then he's fucked that way too. So there was a time, I was one of the chief proponents of like the Teflon Don theory, that like, look, man, he always seems to get away with every single thing he does. And that was very true for a very, very long time. But when you have the entire Democratic establishment against you, now you have the entire Republican establishment behind the scenes that's against you and working to undermine you. And you have legal authorities up your ass relentlessly. And you have a very popular Republican governor who's only rising in popularity on the regular. And you have a media that still to this day, it just relentlessly shits on you. That's so many things that are against you that it would be kind of a miracle for him to remain politically relevant and to win a general election in 2024. So, look, I'm sure many of you guys out there disagree with me. We've been down this path a million times before. I don't want to make the walls are closing in argument because I think that's stupid. I think it's possible, even all these cases, for whatever reason, end up failing, right? But we're not just talking about the legal aspect of this. We're also talking about the political ramifications and fallout from it. And homeboy has 9 lives, but we might be on his 10th right now. And at some point, you run out of them. So we'll have to see. I don't want to be too definitive. The title of this video is a little bit clickbaity. All I'm saying is he's definitely in trouble, and nobody's even talking about these other legal issues that he have. And some of these other legal issues might actually be stronger than what the FBI and the Department of Justice are working on right now with that raid. Hey, y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop, and watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.